The intended use of this podcast is for entertainment purposes only. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the host and guests independently, and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Updog Challenge Incorporated, its sponsors, or any other partnered organizations. Updog Challenge Incorporated does not guarantee the accuracy or reliability of any opinions expressed. In no way should the information provided during the Sweet Spot and Updog podcast be considered veterinary, medical, legal, or professional advice. At all times, the advice of your personal professional should supersede any information provided, derived, or inferred from listening to this podcast.
Ready, set, go.
Welcome to the Sweet Spot, an Updog podcast. I'm Andrea Morissette.
And I am Jack Bailey, and we are your hosts today for this great episode. I say it's great. All of our episodes are great, of course, but we get super excited. Dre and I get super excited when we get to these episodes where we get to talk about
Freestyle! Whoop, whoop. I know everybody out there doesn't play Freestyle, but it is Jack and my favorite game. And so we get extra excited when we get to have conversations about Freestyle. Now, what gave you the idea for today's conversation, Jack? Because you actually brought it up as a topic idea, and I jumped right in because I love the conversation. But what sparked the idea for you?
So in freestyle judge training, we watch videos together and we score them, and we talk about the evidence behind our scores and like, well, why did you give that score? And why do you think that, how would you defend your score that you gave? And as we've talked about before on this podcast, we don't expect everybody to throw the same exact score because we are humans. We have experiences that, influence our scoring and so forth. But this conversation about we were talking about the tricks category. And, in the tricks category, it talks about difficulty of a trick, and that if you have success with the trick, if it's a difficult trick, and if it's got uniqueness or creativity, that could influence a score and make the score higher.
Yep.
And so I just started thinking about that difficulty of a trick and what that means. And I honestly didn't know where I fell on this. I had to just kind of think to myself back and forth. And then I reached out to Dre about it on text. So I have no idea what Dre's thoughts are about this. We just thought it'd be a fun one to have a conversation with you guys about. Sometimes, so let me get to the point here, because
What's our topic today, Jack?
Right. In my head, I know what the topic is, but meanwhile, the listeners are like, what the hell is the topic?
What are we talking about?
So sometimes a team may have a trick that took them a long time to train. And so the difficulty was in the training, and maybe it wasn't difficult, but it was difficulty or time intensive, whatever you want to call it. It took a while to train this particular trick.
Mm-hmm.
But then the execution of the trick in competition really isn't that hard. Maybe the throw's not that hard of a throw, or the team movement really isn't that hard. It might be unique because perhaps the judges haven't seen it, which should influence your score a little bit. But the difficulty of it really isn't there in terms of the execution. So my thought was, well, what is the idea of difficult? Does it include the time that it took me to train that trick? So I think an example of this is, so I have a trick in my routine with Ferris. If you've watched Ferris's routine, you probably remember this one. Basically, I set him up in a way where he goes under my legs and he picks up a roller, and I basically throw two discs up. One hits the ground, becomes a roller. He grabs that between my legs, and I quickly throw another one out. The second throw is thrown before Ferris ever picks up the roller. So Ferris sees that one running, flying downfield as he's supposed to pick up the roller. It took me a little while to train it. It took me a little while to figure out the timing of it. It took me a little while to make sure Ferris didn't blow off that roller for the long toss because that was totally what he wanted to do at the beginning.
Mhm.
So there was training involved in it. However, once I got the timing right, once Ferris knew not to blow off that roller,
Right,
the actual execution of the trick, it's not, I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's not super difficult. It's just a
right,
double disc throw. I grab one, one hits the ground. It's a roller throw and then a backhand out toss. So it's really not a super difficult throw in terms of executing it. Now
right,
that we have it, I can execute that 95% of the time. You know, the only time it's going to mess up is if like the roller happens to hit a bump in the grass or something.
right.
But otherwise, it's going to be a well executed trick. Um, a different thing I think you could say would be a like a very difficult throw, like a
One of those jumping, spinning under your leg throws or something.
yeah, or like a throw behind, like some people do the sidearm behind their back, or like, there's just some throws, air bounces. A spinning air bounce
Finger
is hard
flick,
to throw.
finger flick,
And
hard.
those are hard to train, like they're hard to learn, but they're hard to execute. Like
Right.
I might be able to execute one today, and then tomorrow when I try the spinning air bounce or the girly or whatever, it flubs and I
Yep.
don't, it's not a good throw. So my question to myself was like, geez, well, how do I score this? Because when I see somebody doing a trick that I know took some training, but the
Hmm.
actual execution of it wasn't really that hard. Where does that fall with my scores? And maybe does it fall in different categories and different skill areas in the human category? So anyway, that
That's the
was my
topic.
thought. That's the topic. And Dre,
Yeah.
I want to know what you're thinking.
Yeah, it's really interesting. The first thing that I thought of when you brought this up, was a conversation I had probably 10 years ago, um, when I was playing Moxie and Leap because I was committed to every year coming up with a new dog catch, that I had never seen before, some variation of a dog catch or some variation from a move. In my career at that point, that was like one of my goals, is like doing something different every year. And I found that, being able to execute those, I gave myself a lot of difficulty. Like I noticed that I could be at a world championship and other players are scoring better than me because they have higher success or doing simpler to execute freestyle moves at a higher rate of success and getting higher scores because their success score was higher, even though my ingenuity was higher and my difficulty was higher. So, then I came up with this thought of like, you can either have a style where you're making something simple look difficult, or you're taking something difficult and making it look easy. And I realized that the kind of style that I was playing with was taking something difficult and making it look easy. And that wasn't the most efficient way to approach getting a good score in freestyle, because I was front loading all my work and then needing to deliver at a high level without much payoff from it, versus if I kept the execution part easier, made if I chose things that were easier to execute under stress, like a lot of the people that I was competing with were doing, um, it would make it an easier way to get those points. And we had this conversation recently. Also, is like how do you what are we actually paying people for with their ingenuity, and are you actually getting paid for as difficult as the trick is? And that brings me to the judging conversation. Like I think in this conversation we're just assuming that the judges know what they're looking at as like a baseline. But for the most
Yeah.
part, like even at a lot of world championships, the judges don't really know what they're looking at because they haven't maybe played in a long time, or they haven't trained any of those new tricks that have come out in the past 2 or 3 years. They have no idea. Like I can look at a trick and say, okay, I can see how I would get there. But if I've never gone through the process with a dog and gone through the sensitivities and whatever the challenges are that are going to come up in that move, I don't know how difficult it is to train. And so I think if we address the judging thing first off, that like, from a local judging perspective, I try not to ever get attached to scores at all from any qualifier or local, because most of the time the judges are not being paid. They may or may not be certified judges. They may or may not have the experience, right? So I don't really I don't judge myself on those scores. But at a championship event or a larger event, a regional event, you would expect that the judges are being compensated and that they're certified to judge the categories that they're judging. So then you could start thinking about how hard it is to execute what you've actually planned when it's windy, when you're stressed, if it's wet and rainy, if it's a bright sunny day and your dog struggles with that, if it's cold or really hot, and all of those elements impact whether or not you can consistently deliver whatever it is that you're trying to deliver, right? So like how much work are we really giving ourselves for what we're getting paid? And I think that as a result of thinking about that, I kind of came down to that making it more of a patterned behavior with simpler execution, front loading the work, like you were saying, right? So putting a lot of the workload in the training and the development of the trick, and then patterning the trick into the sequence of whatever comes before and whatever comes after makes it a lot easier to execute under duress because you're running a pattern. So I like to front load all of that work now and then make sure that whatever releases or execution I choose for the final trick at an event, it needs to be able to happen in any wind or sun or wet condition, or I'm not risking it unless it's a performance round or something where, you get paid for extra ingenuity or you get paid for risk taking. Some organizations pay, like depending on what organization you're playing, they all have different freestyle rules also. And obviously for Updog, we have an ingenuity category. So if you are working on something that's never been seen before, you're going to get paid for that just because we haven't seen it. So there's value in putting in the really unique tricks. And if you don't hit it, then you're not going to get as much value as if you do it well or execute it successfully. So I think that's that balance that you're talking about, Jack. For me, I've shifted from needing everything to feel really hard to wanting it to feel smooth and fun and to have it maybe a little less of that executable difficulty at the event. Does that make any sense?
It does. And I think from all right, so I still want to know though. Like I
Yeah.
think that was made sense from a player perspective. And you
Mhm.
mentioned the judging a little bit too. But let's shift even more toward the judging side. So let's just think like A B comparison, right? So um something that so like the move that we started out talking so that we don't switch into a different move, but like
Your Ferris move.
not to talk about Ferris, but that
He is pretty
that move
handsome.
since we've already talked about it and you guys know what I'm saying. It is a took some time to train. It's unique, not
But it's
hard to
not hard
execute.
to execute when you're
Not
in the
hard to
space.
execute,
So
right?
I would say that's ideal, right? Because it has high ingenuity, high creativity, and it's easily executable under stress.
So from a player perspective, absolutely. I
Yeah.
like a move like that, right?
Mhm.
And I hope that I will get points in ingenuity, perhaps even showmanship somewhere in there, athleticism and
Mhm.
showmanship. And I'm going to get some points for tricks. But
Mhm.
my question is, now let's say somebody comes along and does a trick that is unique and that took some training, but is
Mhm.
actually a hard executable, like it's the throw itself is also difficult to
Mhm.
execute. Do they get additional points?
I would pay for that. I would pay that, yes. And it depends on whether the judge can even pick up on all the things that are
Right,
happening.
right,
So, like, that was a part of our
right.
conversation. So, when we talk about freestyle, right, I'm thinking about big events that we've judged together. The Invitational is one of them, recently, where, like, if we don't see everything that is really going into the content in that set, how can we pay for it? If it's happening
Like,
so fast or it's so complex that you can't process it unless you're training at a really high level to even see that the notice about what the person's doing, you're not going to get paid for it. So it's like having a multiple with your back turned to the judge. If you're going too quickly or the judge can't really process the information that you're giving them in a palatable way, that's another thing about on-hand, off-hand throws. Anytime somebody asks about is that valuable, right? Depends on if the judge sees it. Make sure that the judge can see that you toss something from your dominant hand to your non-dominant hand, or make it obvious, like throw one with your dominant hand, then throw it with your non-dominant hand. So I think from a judging perspective, it's twofold. One, does the judge have the experience to even know what the difficulty and ingenuity is to train that? Do they have enough basis in dog training to understand what's being trained and how difficult that is? And two, do they observe it? Do they catch it in the moment and actually log that happened? Now, hopefully they do, but as a player, you can help the judges see what these shiny moments are in your freestyle routine by setting them up intentionally and making sure you're not rushing through it. Um, but I think that it's hard to catch everything if it's not on video. We can go back and slow-mo everything and see everything that people are doing, but it's always a risk to deliver something with really high difficulty, that you won't get paid for all of it, but at least you have a chance of getting paid for some of it. And if it's gonna give you a catch ratio of like if you have a 50% chance of catching it, that's not worth it for me for whatever ingenuity bump you're gonna get. But if I'm like 75 to 80% on like a butterfly, I'll throw a butterfly if my dog catches 75 to 80% of those. I'll throw a finger flick if my dog is catching them well in that spot. But I'm going to make sure that if I'm throwing a finger flick, it's going to be a dry disc. Because if it has slobber on it, the throw isn't going to work, right? How many times you've seen people try to throw a finger flick and it comes flinging off their finger? So I think that part of that is the setup. So if I have a finger flick in my routine, like I do with Capiche, I know that when I pick up my disc from my directional movement, that's the first one I'm picking up and I'm wiping it off and checking for slobber. And I make sure my finger flick is my first one. So I think that if you're going to be releasing stuff like that, where you're increasing the difficulty and the risk that it might not go well, you have to take extra care that it'll be seen and that you're setting yourself up to limit the variables of failure that can, because that's really what it is, right? Like you can throw a roller and you're going to have pretty consistent release other than depending on the grass. Because I borrowed that roller with Magic too. I do the in between the roller, and the grass totally makes all the difference whether that roller goes well or not. And sometimes when you have really great grass, like we do at Alabama for Uptiff, that thing sails. And then your dog comes in faster than they should. So, you might say a roller is a simple throw, but that you have to take into account what kind of grass. So that's what Jack is thinking about. And that's what I'm thinking about when I'm throwing that. The variable of risk is I need to execute this in thick grass. And so my brain needs to be thinking about the execution of that move happening correctly given the circumstances. If you're throwing a finger flick, you're going to need to make sure that you don't have slobber on your disc and that you're paying attention to your wind direction, because that's a disc that just can be, can be flown either kind of way. Brushes are the same thing, right? It's
The
not that
worst
hard to
is
execute a brush, but if you do it downwind, it's not going to go very well. But if you do it with your nose up into a headwind, it's going to blow over your head. So I think all those moves take extra intention.
I I can't stand it just because you mentioned the slobber a bunch of times, and
Yeah.
in my head I'm thinking about it. Ferris is a slobberer, and like I'll pick up his disc, and if I pick it up in the at the wrong spot, right? Because
Yeah.
sometimes, most of the time, there's only like one or two slobber spots on the disc. So like if you are lucky and you pick it up, you don't get a slobber spot.
Right.
But if you do, and then you just turn it a little bit, you're like, okay, this spot's dry. I know there's been a couple times when like I picked up a disc and I felt it slobbery and I'm like, okay, let me just rotate it a little bit and it's still slobbery. And I'm like, what the
Yep.
heck? Like the whole
Yep.
disc somehow got slobbery and now I'm screwed and I got to throw this disc. And hopefully it's not, that's not the disc that you're going to throw that really hard throw with, because
Yep.
that's going to make it even worse. But
Or you might
I
need to
want to go
bank a
back.
disc. You might need to bank a disc for that. You know what I mean? You might
Well,
need to
right.
put
Then
one
if you
in
can,
place.
yeah, if you can quickly throw either a short, throwaway toss that doesn't look, you're not making it look like a throwaway toss, and then get another one that's dry to throw your really challenging throw. I want to go back though before we get too far from it because you mentioned the um invitational, and
Yeah.
this definitely came up in my head at the invitational. There were multiple teams at the invitational that did a Jakey handoff. So for
Hmm.
those of you that don't know what a Jakey is, a Jakey is when the dog leaves the ground to kind of do a rebound off your body, and they come up, and as on their way up, you throw a disc to them. They bounce off your body and land on the ground. So, like, instead of them hitting your body and then throwing the disc like a vault, they're getting the disc on the way up. So they catch on the way up, bounce off your body, and go down.
Yep.
A number of teams, which I thought this looked great, and a number of teams obviously had put in time to practice this. Dog coming up catches the disc as they either as they hit or right after they hit, just depending. They actually took the disc, fished the disc out of the dog's mouth, and
Yep.
then the dog landed without the disc. Pretty
Yep.
cool, slick move, right? That's definitely a move that took some time to train. The actual execution of it, not that hard. The dog's coming up. I just basically, the throw is this far, right? I throw to the dog comes up, they hand it to me, dog goes down. Still a good scoring trick because I've got creativity there. It's a cool, unique trick. However, then I noticed some teams adding a little bit of difficulty to it. And it wasn't just the one time. It wasn't just the dog coming up, hit and hand off and down. It
Hmm.
was dog coming up, hit, go down, spin, other hand, dog coming up, spin, come down. All
Hmm.
of that happening really quickly
Yep.
elevated, like now all of a sudden the difficulty level of that trick went up because
Yep.
there's a lot of like I gotta quickly get those discs in and out of my hands. I've got to have the dog moving pretty quickly. I'm
Hmm.
throwing with both my right and my left hand. And so essentially the same trick. It's essentially a Jakey handoff, but
With
the
variations.
execution of the second one that I just described was much higher. And so I feel like that one should be scored higher
Hmm.
than the first one. So
Hmm.
again, both of them cool tricks, but and this go again, Dre mentioned it already, but it goes back to like, is a judge noticing that? And
Right.
and sometimes to be completely honest, it may not be like something happened when you watched the team. But
Yeah.
if it's sorry, if it's a slick team, you don't even really know what happened the first time that you see it.
Right.
And sometimes it becomes the signature trick of a
Uh-huh.
team. And so then judges start to realize what actually is occurring. And sometimes they get paid more for it the second or third time that a judge sees it instead of the first
Yeah.
time. Because the first time they may be like,
Surprised.
what just happened?
Yep. Yep. Yeah. And the other thing is all of that being done in flow. So that's one thing we haven't really alluded to yet is it's one thing to stop, set up a move, and execute it. It's another thing to link it with another move or setup move. And then it's another thing to link it with another trick. So it's one thing to do like hit it to a Jakey, but it's another thing to do a Jakey handoff to another Jakey handoff or a Jakey handoff to a backstall dog catch to a vault off. Like those are, that's where I was saying, like you can teach the individual trick, but if you pattern it with tricks around it, it becomes a multiplier. But it also requires the judge being educated and cognizant enough to catch what they're seeing and understand, even if they don't see exactly like that happens all the time. I'll be like, okay, what was that? It looked really cool. And I'll still pay them for it. If it blows my mind, I've never seen it before, I'm definitely paying for it. Because if I can't see what it is and it happened well and it was really entertaining, that's a ton of ingenuity. I watch freestyle all the time. It's my job, you know? So like if I see something that I haven't seen before, you definitely have to pay for that in ingenuity, even if the judge doesn't necessarily know what it is. But if you're a new judge and you haven't had much experience seeing freestyle. That's why we say in the judging course and such that it's best to start with dog and then team before you start doing handler, because handler has so many intricacies of different hands and grips and releases and inside tricks and management that take a lot of time for teams to be able to develop and flow. And the top teams do it effortlessly. So the top teams at the Invitational delivered those things like they were easy. That's similar to what I was saying before, right? Taking something difficult and making it look easy. And that has a special sort of like flash to it. It's like you're cruising through it with, you know, that thing, cool guys don't watch explosions. It's like you're walking down the street and the building blows up behind you and you don't even look. It's got that same kind of cool factor when you can deliver tricks that nobody else can do and you can link them with other tricks. So I think that's
And
worth it for me. I love doing stuff like that, but I wouldn't say it's the best, most efficient way to score. If you want the best, most consistent scores, I would make it simpler to execute and keep your same difficulty, but that's not the type of player I am. So I think it just depends on the person.
you brought up something that I don't mean this in a, and you didn't either. You obviously, we're talking about like quarter points here, maybe a half point on a particular thing. And we're talking about nuances that take a great player to an amazing player,
Yep.
like so it's not that these players that are doing what I'm about to say are not great players. They are. But I just see an opportunity to earn some more points. We're all about finding points, an opportunity to find more points. A couple things that I've been seeing with some top level players, not just in Updog, in other organizations as well. Just like Dre said, a lot of pauses
Mhm.
between tricks. Sometimes players try to mask it by doing a fidget or something. Hey, do it. Do a fidget. Try to
Yep.
take my attention off the fact that you have to pause to do this next trick. But if I'm a good judge, I should still
You're gonna
notice
know.
you're still gonna get a great score. But if the player after you does it without the pause and can do it in flow, they should get a
You're gonna
better
get the pop.
score.
Yep.
And then the other thing is, I feel like we are really starting to see a lot less medium to long range work
Mhm.
and a lot more concentration on up close work. And when I do see the longer throws, they're not great.
Right.
Um, and so I just think that like another way to find some points is if you,
Interpretation.
yeah, just don't forget that it's not just about 7 yards away from you. Everything doesn't take place like, super close. You want to do cool stuff there, but you also want to do some cool stuff, a little bit further out and showcase some cool throws that are longer range as well. And I'm not even saying I'm including myself in all of this as well. Those are ways that I can find points too. But as a judge just watching, I've noticed a trend there that
Yeah.
the flow isn't quite there with some of the linking of tricks,
Yeah.
and everything seems to be getting like super tight and very like tricky oriented up
Yep.
close. So anyway, there's some areas to find
There's,
points.
yeah, two thoughts that gave me while you were sharing. And the first one about that close in game. It is much more difficult to throw a well executed overhand wrist flick at 10 yards than it is at 15 or 20. 8 yards even. Like I would love to see a really nicely executed simple sidearm or overhand wrist flick floating to the dog and interception at 8 yards. That shows handler skill. Um, Throwing it at 15 is easier, right? And so you'll see more of that 15, 20 yard out throw. People gather their discs, and by the time they gather their discs, their dog's right back on them again. And that's how we get that sweet spot game where you're not really moving a whole lot, and it's just like a single linear line back and forth. So when you start adding those intermediate throws, 8 to 12 yard throws, maybe, it changes the tempo of the game. It changes how fast your dog is coming back in. It makes it a lot more available to have a more open routine. where it's not so like out throw and then in, out throw and in. It has like this flat work, movement, dynamic, kind of organic thing about it if with that intermediate game. That's the first part. The second part, in regards to finding your points, separation from hand. I cannot tell you, I don't think I have a pet peeve that is bigger than that, than releases that happen. Now, I'm not saying new players, and I will tell every single one of the people that I work with, if you're working on flips with your dog, do flip takes until the dog can do a flip. And I'm happy to see that as a judge. If your dog is not complete with their flip yet, I would rather see a well executed flip take where the dog lands nicely and it communicates to the judge, hey, I'm still working on this, than you throwing something that your dog is not ready to do. If you're a new player and you're trying to fill out your freestyle, right? So I'm not speaking about new players. I'm talking about, higher level freestyle when you're starting to look for those quarter points to stand out at competitions, separation from hand. So when you're throwing your vault, if your vault toss is only this far from your hand and and that far from your dog's mouth, 2 inches from your hand, 2 inches from your dog's mouth when you execute it, you're not going to get a high score for that vault for me. But if you send it like Jack sends it, where the disc is up and the dog is still on the ground, and the disc is 3 or 4 feet above where the handler's back is, so the dog actually has to jump and they're not walking off the handler's back. Obviously, within the athleticism and safety of your dog, that's paramount from everything. But that sort of level of execution of a vault is going to get a much higher score. I mean, that's more than a quarter point difference for me. I
Yeah.
wouldn't even mentally process a vault, a leg vault, a back vault, a side vault. I don't even mentally count it if it's got really close separation from hand, because that's not a vault to me. The dog didn't have to push off and go get the thing. They're just on your back and then kind of hopping off your back and they're catching it on the way down. So there's a huge difference and that it counts for your flips too. If your flips are right, you're releasing last second, the next way to elevate that is to create space and be able to execute a thrown flip where the dog is meeting it interception in the air and showing great athleticism. So if you're looking to get those quarter point, half point, 3/4 point bonuses on your handler score, look for separation of hand. Can you get that disc up earlier and more out in front of your dog so that your dog has more time to spot their landing, to show their athleticism in the move and really show some expression in their body. And I think that applies for even like multiples, everything. If you can create a little bit more space between you throwing the disc in the dog's mouth, that elevates the trick because there's variables in between your hand and the dog's mouth, like wind, right? A wet disc, handler throwing skill, how much spin you have, all that kind of stuff. So separation from hand's another big one.
Oh, I totally agree with that one too.
Yeah.
The I think the thing that makes this challenging for our players and of course challenging for us too is what we started talking about at the very beginning too, is that that balance
Risk.
between making sure, right, I have all everything that we just said as a way to push and find your
It
points
makes it less
is
successful at first. Yeah.
makes it less successful at first. So I totally get
Yeah.
why players do these things. I've done them as well. But then once you reach a certain plateau and you're looking for like, okay, how do I take it to the next level? Then the next level is, all right, I'm gonna have to push the risk factor a little bit. And by
Yeah.
pushing the risk factor a little bit, get out there, practice that throw. Like Dre just mentioned the flips. Like, if I throw the disc down towards my dog's mouth, then and they flip, then likely they're probably going to catch every one of them. And when I throw it up, just like Dre said, more susceptible to getting hit by the wind. My dog's got to really jump up and use their athleticism to get that disc. But if I practice that and I work on it, then that's going to end up being just as successful as when I threw them down into my dog's mouth.
Yeah.
And so then I get the benefit of the success, but I also am now getting the benefit of not only the human score, but the dog score. Just like Dre said, and all of those things we're talking a lot about human, but they impact the dog score too. The dog's going to look
Yep.
way more dynamic. Think about the flash score for the dog. Think about collection and control. Like those scores are going to get higher as well. So it's not just on your human side that you're gonna get those little bumps in points. But yeah, it's a little bit of a game. And it's a little bit of like up and back, right? Sometimes you try to elevate it too much and your catch
You have to
ratio
scale it back.
starts getting
Yep.
impacted and you're like, whoa, let me bring it back down.
Yep.
But it's always good to play that game and keep playing that game and play it during practice so that
Yep.
you see, okay, I can definitely stretch it on this throw, but on
Yep.
this other throw, I can't stretch it yet. I need more practice myself with that throw and so that the success is still there.
Yeah. And if you don't put it in there, if you're not working it in your routine, you're never going to get it. That's just the way that it goes. If you don't, I have all kinds of moves. It's funny because Leap retired a few years ago, but he's on Luberson now, and so he's like wanting to play freestyle again. So he remembers his whole routine, but I hadn't run it in 3 years, and so he's running all these patterns. And just looking at my old routine, I pulled up my last competition version of my routine, and there's still 3 or 4 things in there that we didn't perfect, that it wasn't competition ready on his at his last competition. And it obviously never will be now because he's a 10-year-old dog and we're just doing like simpler, funner versions of his freestyle, like not the same. We're doing baby dog versions of his freestyle, right? Low late releases for his flips, lower late releases for his vaults, earlier, pausing between things and making sure he's set up. And so it starts that way. And then as they are in the prime of their life and they're feeling great and been practicing a lot, then we take more risks. And as our dogs slow down again, then we simplify things again. Um, but yeah, it's so interesting. I don't think we ever stop pushing ourselves in freestyle if we love playing the game. You're always inventing new tricks or new things that you can do with your dogs, and sometimes you don't even finish them before the dog retires, and then the next dog gets to work on whatever those things are. So I like the risk factor. I think that's my favorite part of freestyle is being able to create something that's yours that people haven't seen before and that they want to like, steal or try or copy. Um, Something that gets people's attention for being really creative. And I like the risk factor in that, and I like the dopamine hit from pulling it off. Because I mean, you could play safe freestyle. Plenty of people do, and they get one drop or no drop catch ratio, and that's how they win most of events because judges are easily swayed by giving a really high score just because all the catches were made, regardless of the technical difficulty or the pausing or the release, how far the disc is being released, just because the dog caught it. So you could argue if you want to get really high, consistent freestyle scores, yes, you can do really close releases from your dog. You can keep your stuff simpler and you can pause in between all your things. And if your dog catches everything, you'll get a higher score than probably you deserve. But if they drop one, then you're screwed. If you don't have that 100%, but I mean, that's what works, right? You see that at competitions all the time, big competitions. Somebody goes dropless, that's what everybody's talking about. Do they talk about the amazing throw or move they did? No. They only talk about that the dog caught everything. So,
That's not completely true. Um, because you talk about that dopamine hit of like, getting that big hitting that big trick or that
yeah,
risky trick.
yep.
And you may not get the payoff from the judges because perhaps if you threw in too many of those big risk tricks and you didn't
Missed them.
hit two or three of them,
Then you look
you
messy.
probably took a hit from the judges. But the dopamine hit comes from when you're exiting the field and you're walking back to your tent with your dog and like people are like, "Whoa, man,
That
I
was
love that
cool. Yeah,
whatever throw it was," or that was awesome when your dog hit this move. The players know, and a lot of times the players know more than the judges do because they're the ones actually out there trying these tricks and they see how difficult it is. They know what it takes to get the timing right and all of that stuff. And so,
right.
take those wins, take those, some of the most fun rounds of freestyle for me have been either when I was completely out of the running and I didn't give a crap what my score was. So I was just like, I'm gonna try all my
Throw
weak crap
everything.
that
Yeah.
like that I try and practice, but I know have that big risk factor. You just let it fly. So like sometimes when either, you're way behind and you don't stand any chance, just bring those things to the round
See what
so that you
happens.
can practice it. You got nothing to lose,
Yep.
and just see what happens. And like I said, those are sometimes some of my most fun memories of playing freestyles when I didn't care and I was just like, heck, I'm just gonna try all my cool stuff that a lot of times doesn't hit. And then you get that dopamine hit when another player sees a cool move and they're like, "Oh, what was that? Tell me how you
Yeah,
did that," or whatever. And like,
that's so interesting.
um,
We're
so
so
yeah, it's not.
different as freestyle players. I love it. Because like I would be so stressed to go out there and try a whole bunch of new stuff that I didn't know if it was going to hit. Personally, as a player, that would stress me out. And I love that like is the exciting part for you. It just shows that like everybody gets their reinforcement from the game, however they get their reinforcement from the game. If somebody wants to go out and have, a no drop or a one drop routine and see if they can actually pull off that, as I've had that goal before. And now that I've gone dropless a bunch of times over the past 20 years or whatever, sure, that would be a goal at a finals, but I would say I don't know that I would ever have that as a goal at a finals event, as a goal. Because if I have that as a goal, that means I'm making sure it's going to happen, which means I'm taking some of the edge off of my play personally. So I like to have some risk factor. Um, like Jack was saying, I really get if I have been putting together a new move, but if I'm not hitting at like 85% or better, I'm not gonna feel good. So that's the amount of risk that I'm willing to take is practice to the point that I feel like I can put that thing in at 85%. And if I can't, it's not going in. And if I'm sad about that, then I should have practiced more or changed the move to, and to work in some other way. But I love that everybody can get their points however works for them. And in that there's all these different ways of getting reinforced in the game of freestyle, whether that's that you're really pushing your limits or you're trying to have success or you're trying to just throw the whole bag at it like Jack likes to do.
Well, only occasionally. I mean,
When it
obviously,
does,
just
yeah,
like
when
you.
you're out of it. Yeah, if you're
Yeah.
not worried about winning in that moment or you're visiting an updog club, like we're not going to compete at updiff. So if I'm anytime I'm playing updog freestyle, I'm not concerned about my score or if I'm hit, I would throw more of my crazy stuff.
Hopefully, you guys have enjoyed this conversation about freestyle. Even though it started in one place and went five different other places, that's always how it's going to be when we talk freestyle. We
Yep.
hope that you enjoyed it, and we hope we see you on an updog field soon, maybe an updiff field
Whoop,
soon.
whoop. So excited. And in the
In the meantime,
meantime, be kind to each other.
and be kind to your animals. We will see you next time on the Sweet Spot.
Ready, set, go! Yo, you heard the buzz, heard the word on the street. Up dog challenge, it can't be beat. It ain't just fetch, it's a very special game for the dogs and the people. We all shout its name, whether it's a roller or in the air. My canine companion doesn't really care. We're in the up dog zone now. Got that laser focus, making every throw an epic high flying bonus. What's up, dog? We're on the field, sun in the sky, with my best friend soaring, teaching that just to fly. It's the up dog jingle, so come get in the mix for the ultimate teamwork and all the best tricks. From pro and go to freestyle, we're bringing the heat. We're fun, helpful, and a friendly team that can't be beat. So if you love your pup and you love to see the disc really spin, come on down to up dog, where the good times begin.
Yeah, where the good times begin.